Welcome back into another action-packed edition of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, colleague, mentor, and the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone. Mike Tanier joins me. And Mike, we are just moments out from our long-standing regional nightmare coming to an end. The tush-push lives. The vote to ban the tush-push fails. It's a rainy day in Philadelphia, but somewhere I think there are some Eagles fans cracking open a Bud Light or two at this moment.
Push, Eagles, tush, ram it down the Packers' ass. I couldn't be happier. I was ready. I had a black armband ready. I was ready to come in here hot, livid. This was my super villain origin story in progress with the brotherly shove band, with the tush push band. And it's like the clouds haven't lifted, but metaphorically, absolutely, they have. The Eagles are not going to have an asterisk next to everything they've done for the last couple of years because the Packers were mad, butthurt that they weren't able to stop this play.
We're going to get into what this means, what it means for the Eagles, why the vote might have failed, and those sort of things. We'll get into some of the other proposals that didn't even make it to a vote, didn't even make it to the floor, and a whole lot more. But before we get into all that, a little bit of housekeeping. If you enjoy Mike Tanier's work, the kind of analysis and insight and storytelling and dad jokes that you can't get the combination of anywhere else on the internet, make sure you subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack, subscribe to the Between the Hash Marks podcast on Apple, SoundCloud, check it out on YouTube at my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. And if you enjoy my reporting, my analysis, all the fun things Between the Hash Marks, subscribe there on podcast as well. And if you like the show, and even if you're just kind of cruising through and you think that we're kind of like full of it and you don't really like the show, either way, could you please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? Yes. They help grow the show. If you rip us, if you praise us, we'll read it next week on the program.
Packers fans, you want to tell us we're homers. 49ers fans, you just want to whine about anything because you're 49ers fans. Leave the 5-star review, and we will say whatever you say about us.
Mike, I have to throw this out there. I believe it was Emily Kaplan from ESPN pointed out just after the vote that the Green Bay Packers, who proposed the tush-push ban in the first place, lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC wildcard round by a score of 22-10.
Right.
And in today's vote, out of the 32 teams, the outcome was 22 nay votes to banning the play and 10 yay votes to banning
it. They lost 28-3. Basically, their own version, Packers version of 28-3. A little bit of a 4th and 22. Also, if you want to do an old school Eagles, Packers, go back a little while, a little FredEx. We FredExed a little tush push down their throats again this time. But they only had 10 votes. After everything we heard coming into this, they only had 10 votes.
Yeah, I might have flipped that. It might have been 22-10, but it failed to meet the threshold. Either way, yes. The final vote tally was 22-10. The ban does not pass. And you and I both live on different sides of the river, both in the greater Philadelphia region. And I'm driving around running some errands the other day, and I see somebody with a flag with the 40-22 flag. It's basically the score bug from Fox in the Super Bowl and the Eagles Super Bowl win over Kansas City. And I'm thinking that doesn't really like impress me as much as 28-3.
Yeah.
When are we going to see the dudes on the side of I-76 or on the off ramps selling the 22-10 t-shirts, or walking out of Lincoln Financial Field selling 22-10 t-shirts? Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. Maybe we should be marketing this.
We should be marketing it. Yes. What's wrong with you? You just sent the idea out into the world. We could always edit it out. I'm not sure if we know how to do that, but we could always try. By the way, I know some of the people who voted with the Eagles included Dan Campbell. So,
okay.
So you can see right away who the real, not to make this like about gender or anything else, who the real men were, who the real menches were. Let's put it that way.
Who the real football guys were.
Who the real football guys. Who the real football guys were. The Jets also with Aaron Glenn, who's a Campbell associate, voting in favor of the Eagles. So we know who the whiny heinies are, and we know who's serious about football. And the serious about football teams, the teams to beat, are all on the Eagles side on this. So get over it if you're on the other side.
And I think now that the teams that are on the other side of this conversation might come up again next year, for all we know, in the spring meeting, if it's tabled again in this meeting, wherever that may be. But I think that the more valuable use of time is for maybe the defensive coordinators of the teams that voted to ban the tush push, perhaps holding a beer summit right? Like
Yeah.
everybody bring the craft beer from their region, get together and come up with your strategy to stop the tush push. We saw Frankie Louvu, his best attempt at jumping through a window in the NFC Championship game. We saw Bobby Wagner fail to stop the tush push. There needs to be a way. And look, I'm in favor of keeping the play. You and I have talked before on the podcast and off. I'm in favor of innovation in terms of new ways of thinking, of doing things within the sport. It's time for defenses to step up and figure out how to stop this. Because if you're not going to vote it out, figure out the strategy to shut it down so that we can all move on with our lives and never talk about this again. Or the Eagles just keep winning using it because they convert something like 82% of the time on their tush pushes, but then they only were unsuccessful 9 times. They converted it 8 times on the next play, running the same play.
Maybe the offensive line coaches could have their own beer summit where they talk about how to implement it and how
Yeah.
they can make it work for them. By the way, did you see that Frankie Louvu called it a cheapo play? Frankie Louvu was like my nephew when he's losing at Madden and would get mad and would just, after breaking the huddle, would charge out and try to hit the opposing quarterback in the video game. That's what Frankie Louvu was in the NFC Championship game. I don't want to hear about cheapo from a guy who launched himself out of a cannon 10 seconds before the ball was even snapped directly at the quarterback's helmet. Never say the word cheapo, Frankie Louvu, okay? Never get that word out of your mouth. But like you, I'm done with the rhetoric. Let's go. Let's be football people. Let's be football people and learn how to stop it, learn how to adapt it, learn how to change it, and go out there and say it's a 1 yard play. Get the 1 yard, stop the 1 yard. It's part of the game.
It's almost like going back to when the Wildcat first made its debut in the NFL. Remember that back in like
Yeah.
2011,
Oh, yeah.
2012? I
Mm-hmm.
think it was the Miami Dolphins who brought it to the league, and all of a sudden every team had a Wildcat package.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to the point here now that the tush push hasn't been banned from the sport, that the play lives on, that you're going to see, as you just alluded to, teams figuring out their own version of the tush push, whether it's, sliding the quarterback off of right guard rather than going the center way about it. Maybe it's two guys pushing. Maybe it's a certain way that the offensive line, blocks at the point of attack after the snap. But I don't think that it's just going to be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills who are running this thing next year.
Right, and again, we now have Tyler Warren in the NFL. He ran a version of that in college. Other guys, the Packers just drafted a kid, Savion Williams,
Yeah.
who was a high school quarterback. And guess what he did in college? He took short yardage runs. They weren't tush pushes, but they were like wildcat like runs. So, hey, how about we start thinking about ways we can adapt this? Maybe your starting quarterback doesn't want to do it. Maybe the tight end, your Jacoby Brissett, these guys want to run that. And do it and stop carping about it and let's play some football. One thing you pointed out, and I only saw this later, Jason Kelce became a lobbyist and
Yeah,
may
he
have been
flew to
instrumental in all
Minnesota.
this.
Flew to Minnesota, went to the meetings, lobbied the Eagles' case to keep the tush push in the rule book, lobbied against the ban. I do kind of wonder, and I was thinking about this before the vote went down, and all of the reporting was that it had made it out of the various player safety committees and competition committees, that the indication was Roger Goodell was going to be successful in his crusade to ban the tush push. I kind of wondered, why did it take this long for the Eagles to put Jason Kelce on a plane? If I'm Jason Kelce, I'd much rather have gone to West Palm Beach in February than Minnesota in May. And maybe if he lobbies the case at the owners' meetings in West Palm Beach, maybe it gets voted down at that point and it doesn't get tabled to this level in the conversation.
And what's unique about Kelsey, and I think part of it is like, well, who cares what the next player thinks? He's somebody who was being misquoted and misrepresented because he's talked on his podcast and elsewhere where he joke about the tush push getting called and him being saying, "Oh, F my life, oh no," and people were using that like, well, Kelsey didn't like it. Kelsey was worried about getting injured, and here's a guy who can come to them and say, "No, I was misrepresented on these points." I mean, it's a difficult play. There's lots of difficult plays in the NFL. A lot of plays I doesn't want to run necessarily, but like talk honestly about his feelings about the person who being primarily the guy who was most likely to get slammed by 5 defenders going the other way. So the other part of that, like when originally I said, okay, Kelsey's going, whatever. It's like a ceremonial thing, You only had to convince one or two coaches. You only had to sit there as a retired player with Hall of Fame credentials and sit across from one or two coaches who might have been offensive line coaches in the day, et cetera, whoever was making those decisions, and say, this is what I think. You convince one or two, and maybe that's what he did. He convinced one or two at the last second, and that's why we're talking about this, and we're not wearing black armbands.
The reporting about this is going to be fascinating. We're admittedly recording this within moments,
Yeah.
minutes of the vote going down, the ban failing. But the reporting is going to be fascinating. What did Jason Kelce say in that room? Did he really convince one, two, three owners and coaches not to vote for banning this? It's going to be really fascinating to see how that played out. But Mike, I got to say, Detroit are
Yeah.
now the Cowardly Lions. They're the Cowardly Lions. They're the Cowardly Lions.
Dan Campbell just voted on our side. What are you mad about?
The Lions had this proposal going into these meetings that they were going to present, and you probably know this as well, to reform and change the playoff brackets so that it would be seeded by record rather than division champions. With the goal in mind that a 14-3 wild card team doesn't need to hop on a plane down to Tampa to play the 8-9 or 9-8 NFC South division champions.
Right.
And, looking at that rule going in, I thought that it was great for that part of it, because I do think it's nonsense for a team that has double-digit wins to have to go on the road to a 500 or worse or a game better team in the postseason. But beyond that, the games in week 15, 16, 17, and 18 become exponentially more meaningful when you have to play for that one seed, when you have to play for the bye week, when you have to play for the right for a home game. We're not seeing the division champions resting their starters in week 17 and or week 18. They're probably out there playing, and more meaningful football, more entertaining football. That makes it more enjoyable for the fans. It makes your and my life a little bit easier, putting together these colossal columns that go out on Monday mornings, that we actually have real storylines to dive into rather than the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad taking on the Dallas Cowboys backups, right? It just feels like this was the time to make a major change. And the Lions pulled the proposal. They took it off the table.
Yeah. Do we have any knowledge of why they did that? Is there anything coming out for that?
Some rumors and speculation I heard was that they realized that they do not have the votes.
They don't have the votes. They don't have those. Hamilton keeps on giving, folks, at the NFL owners meetings. Okay, so they took it off the board. I'm of two minds on that, because we're coming out of very much a very specific season in which or 2 years in a row really, where we saw those NFC South teams, Buccaneers both times, out there and getting that home game based on not being very good and playing the silliest schedule in the world, and particularly last year where it was the Vikings who were out there 14-3, you're on the road, guys, goodbye, and being stuck in a situation like that. It's often the other way. It's often a situation where it's the black and blue division. And these teams are excellent, and they pounded on each other all year long. And they come out, the winner is some team like the Ravens coming out at with 10 wins. But if you look at them, it's they had the Steelers games were back and forth, and the Bengals games were back and forth, and they played a first place schedule. And it's often somebody, years ago, it would have been the Patriots facing the Jets and the Bills when they sucked, and the Dolphins in a typical Dolphins year. And yeah, they were the Patriots, but we won 15 games. So it can go both ways with that. And so I don't hate the idea that winning the division has a very special, very concrete thing, and that's that home playoff game. And that's a little reward for, yes, an NFC South team. Yes, you two fans can at least hope for that home playoff game. Buccaneers fans or Falcons fans, if you pull it off, or in the AFC South. If the Jaguars are the team that has a sneaky season, they can at least have a home playoff game in London or wherever the Jaguars play these days, if they manage to pull that off. So I see both sides of it. I'm guessing the competition committee probably saw both sides of it and didn't think it was going to be a high priority.
I can to a degree as well. I understand wanting to get more than a hat and a t-shirt for winning your division, but do you really deserve more than a hat and a t-shirt for winning the AFC South? Because even if you win your division and you're playing a home game, if you won the weakest division in football and you're the only above 500 team in that division, did you really play a harder schedule? And the teams that are 13-4 or 14-3 or 12-5, it's not only because they won the tougher, the better games because they played the tougher schedule. They might have just handled their business. They might have, and the teams that went 9-8, maybe they just picked off the third place team that they had to play from the division in the other conference from the prior year. You know, I'm not going to get myself too worked up about this,
Right.
but it just feels like the ripple on effects of the rule could have made the last month of the season even more meaningful. And you know, you just think about all the games, all the Sundays late in the year. Fantasy football ends in week 16 or week 17 because everybody knows that nobody's playing for anything
Yeah.
in those final 2 weeks. And I draw the parallel to college football when it was a 14 playoff. By the time you got to the second week in November, maybe even Halloween in some cases,
Hmm.
people are going to these games that don't mean a thing other than
Right.
for 5 or 6 schools across the country. You expand it to 12. All of a sudden, you have 20 or so teams that are in the mix playing meaningful football, not watching their quarterback hop in the transfer portal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just
Right.
feels like the NFL had the chance to make the end of their regular season more meaningful. The games matter just a little bit more. And the playoffs, home game versus non-home game, to me, if you won the division on a flimsy record, you can have what happened to you with Tampa Bay last year, where Jaden Daniels goes in and beats you on a doinked in field goal. That could have happened in Washington just as easily.
Yeah, and one thing about this, because I tend to be old school, this is a remnant a little bit. In the old days, there used to be 5 teams in every division, which means you played 8 divisional games out of 16. So the division games represent half of your schedule. Now there's 4 teams in a division, and it's been that way for years. But so that's 6 divisional games out of 17. So it's getting to be a smaller and smaller percentage. So like part of my brain is like, well, you won the NFC East. That means you had 2 games against the Cowboys, 2 games against Washington, 2 games against the Giants, 2 games against the Cardinals, whatever. This really demonstrates half of your schedule was spent doing this. So this is an accomplishment that deserves this much of a reward. If it's only 6 games out of 17, there is something to be said for, well, yeah, you finish in first place, you get your automatic bid. Automatic bids in college basketball doesn't mean you get a home game.
Right.
If you're the 12th seed in your what do you call it, bracket, you don't get a home game or whatever. You go travel and do what you need to do. And so I don't hate the idea that the NFL comes up with something similar. Just not going to happen this year, I guess.
I'm going to throw a curveball here at you that wasn't on our outline, but I think it's like what I do with my son Luca in the backyard, putting the ball on the tee and then letting him try to hit it over the fence.
Oh, good. I'm a 2-year-old trying to play t-ball. Let's hear what we got.
Almost three, but but the 49ers signed Brock Purdy to a
Yes.
$53 million extension that we haven't had the chance to talk about
Right.
since our last podcast. $53 million annual value. And again, everybody was celebrating this move, and you saw all the posts on Blue Sky and Threads, and even in my Substack chat, which people should join, saying, "Oh, Purdy got the bag," and the little money emojis, and he got paid, and all this. Is there a lingering uncertainty from the 49ers about Brock Purdy, even though they just committed to him, that they announced this contract extension at like 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time on a Friday? They didn't wait to announce it Monday morning, lead the news cycle with it. And maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but
Mm-hmm.
at $53 million AAV, Brock Purdy's contract ranks sixth in
Yeah.
the NFL, which is probably about where it should rank.
Yeah.
But you look at the deals that have been signed over the last couple of years, the Dak Prescott extension, the Joe Burrow extension, even Trevor Lawrence at his time, Tua,
Yeah. As I
Jordan
say,
Love, they all
you're
reset the market.
no, Tua and Love did not. You're looking at the whole thing wrong. Here's my thing. It's going to be tomorrow's column at the two deep zone.
Oh, see, I told you I put it on a T. I love it.
Yes. Yes. We now have officially a quarterback middle class, or a quarterback upper middle class, or an upper middle class, but not just the high class. So you have the Burrow contract, the Lawrence contract, the Allen extension, the Prescott extension. They're up here at the elite class, and underneath them has grown over the last couple of years the Tua extension, which was shorter and had more outs. The Jordan Love extension, which was a shorter and had more outs in it. The Jared Goff extension, which
Just
was
below this one.
differently, and so that lines up with this one, and now we have the Purdy extension. Teams have kind of landed on, here's the non-historic, non-Allen Jackson Mahomes tier. We know they're not. We're going to stop pretending that tier of quarterback is not that guy. Here is how we compensate them. It's still huge. It's vast. And you can make the money emoji and the little bag and all that other stuff. It's a great amount of money. But like the number, I know you said 55. If you start deflating it, it comes out at about 44 or 45 per year if you start working it out. They all line up right in about the same place. Now, that's good because you now create this contract structure where you're not paying the second tier guy first tier money and then unable to build a first tier supporting cast around the second tier guy. I think that's going to have implications. CJ Stroud, for example, if he elevates again, he goes up and he gets the Burrow bag. But if he's like, oh, he took a lot of sacks and we're a little bit worried and we're worried about, he's still just winning that division, all that stuff, he could wind up at the Love Purdy bag. And it's interesting now that we can finally talk about this instead of saying, well, next guy up gets $375 billion because the last guy got 372.
Right. And I think there are some advantages of the 49ers, even though they took a wrecking ball to their lineup on both sides of the ball through this offseason.
Right.
Signing Purdy to this kind of deal, you're already seeing it in action. They were able to cash up Fred Warner.
Yep.
So you can still kind of build around your guy and add talent around him, even though they traded Deebo Samuel to the Commanders, even though there's, all kinds of wholesale moves around them. Jordan Mason is now in Minnesota. So you got Christian McCaffrey coming off of those injuries, probably going to tote the rock 150 times or something outrageous this year. You can still add pieces around your quarterback when you're not paying him Josh Allen money. It's just the sticker shock for me wasn't how much money that he was making.
Right.
It was that he wasn't making the Allen, Purdy,
Yes.
Jackson money when all of those guys, Mahomes, we've seen him restructure. I'm surprised the Bengals didn't go to Joe Burrow, hadn't handled and get him to restructure.
Right.
You can rework those deals and move money around. The 49ers instead just said, here's the number, here's what we're going to go with. And I guess maybe that avoids some of those restructuring headaches later on down the road.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way Albert Breer, he's the only one who's really written about the details of the contract. They have not come out, which means there might be some surprises buried in there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But he said that, both sides came to the table, including Purdy's representation, looking at the Jared Goff extension and both sides were like, well, here's a deal that's not going to be the next record setter, but was really good for the player and had favorable elements for the team, and both sides were happy with. So it's interesting. Purdy's people come to the table and say, well, let's not make war about this and this and this. Let's get these tens of millions of dollars in and put you in a tier. So there's a little bit of a recognition. First, there's a little bit of a reality set of saying, I know that I am not Joe Burrow, I'm not Patrick Mahomes, I'm not Josh Allen. And the other thing is a little bit of recognition. They won't have to restructure and come to me 40 times to get Fred Warner done. There's a George Kittle extension in the works in some various stage of being in the works so that you can do these things. So again, I think that that's going to bode well moving forward as quarterbacks come through the line, and not all of them are going to get to the point where they should get the next record-setting contract.
And for all of that, I think Purdy and his side deserve a lot of credit because you could have gone to war, you could have held out, you could have gone for the top tier money, but instead they set themselves up to still allow the 49ers to add talent around him. And I wonder if being chosen last overall, being Mr. Irrelevant, walking around through the first 3-4 years of his career, making sub $1.5 million annually, doesn't kind of change your value in terms of expectations and appreciation for that deal when you do start collecting the 53, 54, $42 million, whatever it is per year.
But there's nothing guaranteed beyond this year.
Right.
And there's nothing guaranteed on this year if you have an ACL tear. And you're still, even with the escalators in place at I don't know what the dollar value was, but at a fraction of what your normal fourth year guy who can say, I can play on my year 4 contract, you guaranteed my 5th year, etc. So all the money's new money. So it is a little easier to do the deal under those circumstances where all the money's new money. But again, Love was a first round pick. Tua was a top high first round pick. So there's still precedence in place for saying, yes, not everybody's going to go out there and blast through the records right away. There's another tier. And when you're on that tier, you're on a tier with Jared Goff and Jordan Love and Brock Purdy and guys who've made it to the Super Bowl and gone to the Pro Bowl and things like that. You're not a second-class citizen for being on that tier. You're just not on Mount Rushmore.
It's going to be a fascinating case study in 2 or 3 years down the line to see how these mid-tier contracts worked out from a team building standpoint. Yes. Were the Lions or the Packers or now the 49ers more aggressive in free agency, or did they continue down the road that Detroit and Green Bay has by drafting well and then cashing up their veterans when they come eligible for contracts. Going to be really interesting. The Packers kind of broke out of that mold last year, bringing in Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs at the top of the market. Didn't
Yeah.
do a lot of that this year. They continued to draft well. The 49ers taking care of Fred Warner, taking care of their own. Just going to be real interesting to see how the economics of team building and quarterback contracts now change after these deals that you brought up.
Agreed, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because the whole thing. Well, now that you paid the quarterback, I guess you can't build the rest of the team. That had like calcified into this sort of dumb meme where it's like, well, you better win before the quarterback becomes expensive. And last I checked, I just watched Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, two very expensive quarterbacks, play in the Super Bowl. So
Right.
that's not necessarily true. And I'd like it to turn around to let's talk about the whole roster and not just well the quarterback eats up this percentage of the cap, and therefore this is how things have to be.
Right. And in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, they're able to secure Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but they're just letting Trey Hendrickson sway in the breeze.
Trey Hendrickson is not a happy man from all accounts. Interesting to see how that goes because it's just that's an example of still very bad roster management, especially when you start having Katie Blackburn, be Lucille Bluth and start saying things like, go watch a Star War, Trey Hendrickson. I don't have time to pay you right now.
Yeah, not great there in Cincinnati, but in Los Angeles in 2028, it's going to be a lot of fun when the Olympics roll into town. There will be flag football. The owners voted unanimously, 32-0, to allow players to participate in flag football. And that
Yes.
got me thinking, Mike, what would the ideal dream team, going back to the 1992 Olympics and the
Yes.
dream team that went 8-0 with Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson and Patrick Ewing and 20 of the 50 greatest players to ever play the game at that point in time, won the gold medal and launched basketball in the NBA onto that global scene. Does flag football in the Olympics move the needle anywhere close to that internationally?
I don't know because I don't know what other countries play flag football. I know lots of countries have been playing basketball for decades and decades. Gonna put you on the spot. How old were you when the original Dream Team, were among us in the world?
I was 6. So
You were
just
six.
on the cusp of coming into my like sports,
Yes.
caringness,
Yeah.
my sports awareness, just on the cusp of that. I think Space Jam came out right around that time. And after
Right.
that, I was hooked. I was in.
Right. And the Dream Team was a little bit like Space Jam, where you were watching it and like, I'm excited for how this is going to go. And then there's a little bit like, well, what? Unless you're 6, what the hell am I watching? What is going on? The Dream Team I watched. I was in my 20s,
Yeah.
and I was like excited to see it until I realized I was watching 60-point blowout after 60-point blowout, where you're almost like it's starting to congeal and be like, ooh, that was a little sloppy. Ooh, it doesn't look like they're miscommunicating when they're up by 34 points.
Right.
So I don't know what we're gonna be seeing in this, but I know you were trying to channel that original Dream Team because you published.
I
You're
did. I put together my ideal dream team. So I'm going to
Mhm.
give you my 5, then see who you agree with, who you disagree with, who you would change.
Okay.
And then I also spoke to a handful of executives, one executive, one scout, and one coach.
All right.
And I said, who's your first pick?
Okay.
So I'll reveal the quarterback for those who don't subscribe to Between the Hash Marks on
Okay.
Substack. I'll reveal the quarterback and we can see if they made the right choice.
Okay.
My 5, Jaden Daniels,
Okay.
891 rushing yards last year, rookie rushing record for a QB, 3,600 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks. Tyreek Hill. I have Tyreek Hill because, of course, game-changing speed.
Hmm.
Jahmyr Gibbs, speed, elusiveness. Last year, he had 517 receiving yards, so you can, hit him open in the flat and hope that you're up against some dude from Prague who, doesn't have the speed to keep up with him. He also forced 10 missed tackles, which was second most in the league, according to Pro Football Focus.
Yep.
Brock Bowers,
Ooh.
tight end, matchup nightmare. Hey, Jaden, just throw it up to Brock. He's down there somewhere.
Right.
And that dude from France isn't going to be able to bat the ball down in the end zone. And then my 5th and final pick of my starting 5, Patrick Surtain.
Okay.
You need one defensive player.
Yes.
Dude's a lockdown cornerback, defensive player of the year for a reason. Quarterback's only had a 61 passer rating when throwing his way.
Okay.
Not great for opposing QBs. Great for shutting down British wide receivers.
No, I'm gonna say I've got my own top 5, but I did it differently. Your team would win 1,000,000 to nothing. It absolutely would, no questions asked. And your team would trounce my team. But I'm coming at this with a different direction. Okay, so we're representing America in flag football. I'm going to go in a slightly different order. Running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh,
Trying to get his career back together. He's dealing with PTSD from a youth that was defined by a lot of violence and things like that. Really kind of that knocked his career for a loop in the NFL, but he's still trying to compete. I think the pressure would be off a little bit in an Olympic competition like this. It'd be more of a fun thing. He could refresh his image a little bit through this. Wide receiver, talking about refreshing the image, Josh Gordon.
oh, wow.
Now, granted,
Wow.
we'll have to work on the make sure the drug test gets passed. But he's only about, I mean, we do. Let's be honest. But he's only about, I think, 33 right now, 34 years old. Can still run like the wind. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is going to be open all the time, but so is Josh Gordon against the guy from Prague.
Yes.
Okay, here's a chance to say, here's a capstone to a career that went sideways. Here's a redemption arc for you. A little differently at tight end. I was going to put Kyle Pitts at tight end because we want to see him have some success. But then I thought we could save the Olympic Committee a little bit of money by putting Zach Ertz at tight end so him and his wife can room together.
There you go.
And they can like argue about who gets the most medals and things like that. So yeah, and he'll be open. It's fine.
He catches
And
everything thrown his way too.
yes, exactly. He'll catch all these short passes. It'll be good for the defense. I was thinking Jamal Adams. Do you remember Jason Verrett?
Yeah,
He tore his ACL every time he got out of bed in the
I
morning.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, was a phenomenal player. I think with the Chargers for a year or two. I think he was with the Niners for a year or two. I'm guessing you tape those knees up, he'll be able to play flag football well. Get out there again. Somebody who should have been a Pro Bowler, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get him a gold medal. Let's get him a gold medal for all the time he spent running in pools and rehabilitating those knees. And a quarterback to get him off of our backs and to give a little more glory to his family and have his dad coach Shador Sanders.
Wow.
And then when it's
This is the
45
great
nothing,
comeback team. Forget the dream team. It's the American comeback story.
the comeback team. And then if it's 45 nothing, Prime can run out there and play a little bit too. Because Prime could probably go out there and beat the guy from Prague at this point in his career.
I love it. I love
Right.
it.
But so yeah, it's a different vibe. But then you're watching these guys, and it's like, okay, the human interest angle of these dudes pulling it together, because that's what we lacked when like Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing are dunking on all these dudes from Uzbekistan and stuff like that. The human interest angle is America's mad because the college kids didn't win in '88, and we're just murdering everyone. This will be a little bit more like, look at what these guys have overcome, coming back from. Go out there, USA.
And that's what's interesting about this whole thing is that, you could turn this into a showcase of the NFL and all of the speed and the superhuman athletes and all those things, which is probably what's going to happen because you can pick one team, one player from every team as the maximum that can get
Okay.
sent to the Olympics under this proposal. But, I kind of feel bad for it. And a couple of people brought this up on social media after I published the article. I feel bad for the people who are like, running all of the flag football leagues in the country right now who are really good flag football players.
Yes, good.
And now all
Right.
of a sudden, Jaden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are going to roll in and take their opportunity to compete in an Olympic sport. And
Right.
I do wonder, will it be the dream team winning by 30 or 40 points every single game on the way to a gold medal? Or will they struggle against some of these other teams that play flag football? I don't know how many countries do, as you
Right.
mentioned, but it's a little bit of a different sport. It's not quite,
Right.
ice hockey and speed skating, but it's a little different because there's no tackling. There's
Right.
laterals that keep the ball moving around. There's forward passes. It's just a little bit different as we've seen in the Pro Bowl games, their flag football games. It's not as entertaining as real football. It's
No.
just a little bit different.
It's fun to play. It's
Yes.
fun to play in the schoolyard, but like it's a different thing. But you're right. But the reality is Tyreek Hill can catch a screen pass and will outrun everyone in every flag football league in every country. We're not talking about a sport where when you go to Europe and when you go to Asia, there is a league. There's European basketball leagues, German leagues, even Middle Eastern leagues, Asian leagues, where players are coming up through it. This is sort of like a club sport everywhere. So, and you saw it in the NBA. It's like, well, when they do the Olympic basketball, like there's a bunch of guys playing for Croatia. There's a bunch of guys playing for Greece, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody. There's nobody going to be playing for any. Is there a Canadian who's going to go up there? Is
Jordan Mailata might play for Team
oh,
Australia, right?
Jordan Mailata is playing for Team Australia, but it's not rugby. He's an offensive lineman. It's not like he can like break tackles in flag football. Benjamin St. Juste will go up. The cornerback for the Commanders will go up and play for Canada. Very short list. They get the kickers, but there's no kicking in flag football,
I
right?
don't believe so. No.
Right. So the Australian punting team will not defeat anybody. What you can do, you can have 5 NFL players, and then after 4 touchdowns, put the American flag football club sport people in and let them play out the game.
I like that. Kind of a
Yeah,
mercy rule. A
that would be
mercy rule
mercy rule.
situation. I
Right.
can't tell you how many little league games of ours ended in the fourth inning because we were up like 15-1.
Oh, it's so good they have the mercy rule. Do you keep playing as a scrimmage after that without keeping score, or you just go home?
We just went home. We got our popsicles and our soft pretzel and we got in the car and went home.
That's a smart move, especially because your kids are young. You're not talking about 9, 10-year-old all stars, where kids kind of know what they're doing.
Right.
Right. And also, I'm guessing there are probably some 45-degree temperature evenings, where it's like, okay, 15 runs, goodbye. Let's go
Bye.
home.
See you later.
Bundle up. Let's bundle up, dudes. Pro tip, pro parenting tip: get them involved in youth basketball instead of little league.
Inside. Indoors.
Inside, shorter games. They move the hoop down a little bit for the littler ones. Big difference in terms of like your parenting. Plus, they're running all the time.
Yeah. Get them tired out. Get them tired out so they
Get,
actually go to
get them
sleep.
tired out, and they're involved. They're involved. They're not in left field. I mean, speaking for me and for my kids, we were in left field all the time.
Yeah. I started out at shortstop, wound up in left field. I actually progressively I made the move. I went catcher,
Uh-huh.
shortstop, left field. They progressively realized we got to get this kid to where he's not going to be involved in any of the defense.
Was your dad pushy or something that you were at shortstop for a while when you couldn't play?
No,
Because
what happened was, and this
okay,
this is an all-time Lombardo story. I'm
okay.
like 7 years old. My mother drops me off at my dad's office before a Thursday night game. He's one of the coaches, and he's like, "Oh, what do you want for dinner?" And I go, "Oh, let's have some pizza." So he gets me a large Pizza Hut pizza. I eat the pizza. Ground ball comes. I can't get down to field the ground
You
ball.
didn't poop yourself, did you?
That's my end of my infield career.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, they tried me at infield because they were like sort of desperately, let's give this kid a try anywhere. And it never got out of the practice stage, you know. But in basketball, if you stink, you're still playing defense, running up and down the court. You won't get the ball very much because little kids aren't going to pass to the kid who stinks. But like, it's not this hopelessness situation which little league can be. Now, obviously, if your kids love it, it's different. But
You can be a defensive specialist in basketball. I was a shot block specialist. I was a rebounder.
right, right,
You can star in basketball in different ways and be a contributor to the team.
yeah,
You're not going to be like booting ground balls because you're too full from dinner.
right, and you've got a daughter, and basketball usually remains co-ed until like
Yeah.
13 or so in modern leagues. So she'll be out there playing with all of her classmates. There won't be this weird stratification that you get in baseball of all sports where there's very little contact, where
Right.
you have to stratify the kids when they're 6, which is insane. In basketball, everyone is contributing together until the boys start getting huge. So there's a lot of advantages to it. Just a pro dad tip, just a dad tip here.
Putting it on the list. Putting on the
Yes.
list of things to remember. Mike, what do we got coming up on the two deep zone?
Okay, like I said, I got a Brock Purdy. What do you call it? Column
Breakdown.
coming. Yeah. What are those things I do? Oh, articles. I got a Brock Purdy column coming tomorrow. We're talking about contracts in the NFL, etc. We finished the all-time top 5 quarterbacks. We're done.
Done.
We're
Done.
done. But folks have been asking in the threads, like, yeah, when you wrote it last summer, Jalen Hurts was 5th among Eagles quarterbacks. Is he still 5th? When you wrote it, Jared Goff was like 4th among Lions quarterbacks. Is he still there? So there will be, after the holiday, a little bonus issue in which we talk about some of the things that changed in the last year. And then we're going to do some mini camp news after that, all kind of fun stuff. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, we're going to continue our team by team grades of the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Just coming off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe the Denver Broncos are next up
Okay.
on the list. One of my favorite off seasons across the entire league. I think
Okay.
they've acquitted themselves really nicely on both sides of the ball. They're going to try to beat teams 13-6 with Bo Nix,
Yes.
and they might be able to pull it off based on what they've done defensively this year.
Right.
So we'll grade the Broncos offseason and continue down the list between now and training camp on that front. Mailbag on Friday, where people can ask me the questions. I'll pose those questions to executive scouts and agents across the NFL, and then take a short break for the holiday and hit the ground running next week.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we get a couple days off. We get summer. Summer's coming.
Summer is coming. Pool memberships are calling my name. He's
Beautiful.
Mike Tanier. Make sure you follow him on Blue Sky. Follow him on Threads at Mike Tanier. Be sure to subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. I'm Matt Lombardo. Check me out at Matt Lombardo NFL on Blue Sky and Threads. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud, and my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. And come join the huddle at Between the Hash Marks. Subscribe there on and Substack as well. Mike, this was a lot of fun as always. Let's go practice some flag football.
So some flag football and some tush pushes.